Constabulary Force, JCF, listed 5 men as wanted earlier today. They are 35-year-old Jamel Antoine, also known as Hooks, wanted for murder. His last known address is Dandelion Avenue, St. Anne, and Carissa Avenue, Florida, USA. Jerome Downey, also known as Dada, with last known address Dunkeld District, St. Mary, wanted for murder. Damien Hitchman, who goes by the alias Wingy, wanted for murder. His last known address is Highgate in St. Mary. Also, Roshane Wilson, who also goes by the alias Russian, who is wanted for murder. His last known address is Lodge Lane, Anato Bay in St. Mary. And Sadre Borry, who goes by the alias Borry Boy, is wanted for murder. His last known address, Basin Hill, Islington, St. Mary. The police are asking anyone with information on the whereabouts of these men to contact the Port Maria Police at 876-994-2223 or Crime Stop at 311. In other news tonight, Minister of Education, Youth and Information FAYVAL Williams, during today's post-cabinet press briefing, says all secondary schools are facilitating the newly installed sixth form Pathways program in partnership with private and public tertiary institutions.
We are working currently with all of our schools to understand to get the estimate from them as to the number of students who would be registered. We are working in collaboration as well with many of our community colleges and other institutions to facilitate our students who register for the sixth form program. As we have announced, there are many pathways that we have announced for students in order for them to get additional upgrades in their skill set and training.
Acting Chief Education Officer, CEO in the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, Dr. KASAN TROUPE, said she is assuring principals and teachers that the ministry will continue to work with them to address any limitations that they may face under the sixth form Pathways program.
We are conscious of the limitations within our current high schools, and that is why since 2019 we have been dialoguing. We have conducted our space audits within our high schools, and we also extended that to our tertiary institutions, and that is why we were able to come up with the idea of the off-site opportunities for our boys and girls. So we do understand the concerns of some of our principals at this time, but I use this opportunity to assure them that we are working along with you to ensure that you can address your limitations, and to make sure at the end of the day, all our students are given the opportunity to improve in their certification. This is the ultimate end and desire of this initiative. We know some persons are concerned about some implementation activities, but we are committed. The team is working with our principals right now. I can assure you that conversations are taking place. We have asked our principals to identify a teacher who we will compensate as a senior teacher who will have the hand-holding of these activities. We have asked our tertiary institutions to identify what we call a program officer who we will be working with to ensure that the partnership is taking place.
Dr. Troupe further explained what the accounting of students in institutions entails.
When we talk about the accounting for the students across the different institutions, it's not a literal walking over to institutions from time to time. We are in the electronic space, we have databases. It's really to account for their attendance and for their performance reports. And once we have that information composed and shared, then we know what is happening to our students and we are assured of their progress towards certification. So we are working with our schools at this time. We have the year ahead of us to work through some of their challenges. We're going to be speaking to them individually to look at their program offerings and to plan, to do a growth plan with them to see how we can expand their offerings so it can be relevant to the 21st century demands.
State Minister of Education, Youth and Information, Robert Morgan, for his part, dispelled assumptions made that consultations were not made with parents about the Pathways program.
I think there's a misconception as it relates to the work that we do here at the ministry and as it relates to consultation. Simply because somebody asserts something doesn't mean it is fact. Over the last 2 years that we've been in the ministry, we've had hundreds of consultative meetings, and we have the records on Zoom where we have consulted with the Jamaica Teachers Association, the Principals Association, the Principals and Vice Principals Association, members of the education sector as part of our e-COVID task force to manage the COVID opening of schools. For this pathway program, we have consulted with principals. We have consulted with the National Parent Teachers Association. They have also been a part of discussions as well, CEO. So this assertion that we're not consulting with parents is patently false because the evidence does not support it.
In the meantime, Robert Morgan says schools who wish to have graduation ceremonies will not be barred from doing so under the new Sixth Form Pathways program. Morgan was responding to concerns from school administrators and teachers that the Pathways program would prevent schools from having the popular school leaving exercises. Minister Morgan says the ministry has heard the concerns of education stakeholders and adjusted the policy.
There was an announcement that we would cease graduation ceremonies. Because the logic is, if it is that you're having 7-year school, why do you need to graduate twice? There are some people who are going to leave fifth form, who are going to go to university. Yes, they should have a ceremonial graduation or a school leaving ceremony. We're not challenging that. But recognizing that the system responded to us about it, even though today is not the first day that the idea was mentioned. The system responded to it in a particular way. So we sat down at the ministry and said, listen, what we're interested in is the pathway, not the graduation. So let us pause on this conversation about graduation, leave it as it is, allow the schools to do their ceremonies.
Now, there has been significant social media backlash against the idea that the Pathways program, which will mandate 7 years of secondary school, would ban graduations. The minister says the matter of the supposed graduation ban has been a distraction from what he says are the good intentions of the program. Minister Morgan says there will be no ban on graduations.
We are willing to change our minds. We are not dogmatic. We have an idea and the system don't like the idea. We have an obligation to consult with the system. What we really want to talk about is how to rescue these young people who are disconnected from the system, don't have the qualification. We have created these various pathways for them. So if a school wants to have a graduation, let them have their graduation. So there's no ban on graduation.
Still making the news tonight. Head of the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association, JHTA, Clifton Reader, is reporting that there have been major reductions in the prices being charged for COVID-19 tests. Speaking at a Jamaica Tourist Board press briefing this morning, Reader told reporters that the antigen test is now down to US $17.50 in some hotels, a 65% reduction from the original price of $50 that was being charged by laboratories in Jamaica. He further indicated that the majority of the laboratories have reduced polymerase chain reaction PCR testing rates by 50%. Visitors and locals can now access PCR tests at $75, down from $150. Reader credited the lowered rates to competition. In tonight's COVID-19 update, the Ministry of Health and Wellness reported 30 new COVID-19 cases and 5 deaths, increasing the local infection total to 89,818 and the death toll from the virus now to 2,298. The deaths occurred between July 17 and November 8, 2021. The deceased are comprised of a 59-year-old female from St. Mary, a 59-year-old female from Portland, a 79-year-old female from Manchester, an 80-year-old female from St. James, a 71-year-old male from Hanover. The new cases comprise 16 females and 14 males ranging in age from 2 to 97 years. The cases were recorded in St. Mary with 10 cases. Kingston and St. Andrew recorded 6 cases. St. Catherine recorded 5 cases, St. James 3, Portland and Hanover recorded 2 cases each, while St. Thomas and Trelawney recorded 1 case each. In the meantime, 156 additional persons recovered in the last 24 hours, increasing the total of recovered persons now to 59,678. In the meantime, Minister of Health and Wellness, Dr. Christopher Tufton, said the ministry is encouraging more entities to import test kits as increased competition will drive down the cost of COVID-19 testing. The minister was addressing the House of Representatives yesterday in response to questions regarding the importation of 100,000 test kits that had not been approved by the World Health Organization, WHO, and the United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA. He pointed out that importers must apply for the required permits. Dr. Tufton explained, quote, "Our job is to follow the standards that have been established in law as it relates to the integrity of the kits. Our responsibility in public health is not to determine whether the importer is a yesterday or 10-year importer," end quote. He further stated that he does not know if the entities that have applied for importation have a track record for other types of testing kits, and that their job is to ensure that consumers get what they're paying for, and it produces the results that it claims. Dr. Tufton was responding to questions tabled by opposition spokesman on health and wellness, Dr. Maurice Guy, about the importation of 100,000 SD biosensor standard Q COVID-19 antigen test kits from India. There are concerns that the unapproved test kits could be significantly less reliable in determining a person's COVID-19 status when compared with testing kits which are approved by both the WHO and the FDA. Yesterday, Dr. Tufton said the importation of kits was in breach of the DRMA. He added that they were withdrawn on October 13 by the ministry and a validation process launched after the WHO's surveillance system for substandard and falsified products flagged Jamaica as one of 2 countries in the region that had imported the test kits. Still making the news tonight, Mayor of Kingston Delroy Williams, during yesterday's municipal meeting, announced plans for the reopening of the Red Rose Fish Market. Here is Colleen May with more on this story.
Mayor of Kingston, Councillor Delroy Williams, during yesterday's Kingston and St. Andrew Municipal Corporation monthly meeting, announced that the Red Rose Fish Market in downtown Kingston is scheduled for reopening next week following completion of refurbishing works at the facility.
We are doing our final touches on the Red Rose Fish Market, and I personally went and met with the fish vendors last week and expressed my expectations in terms of the use of the facility, a very lovely facility. And so sometime between this week, next week, more than likely next week, we will open the Red Rose Fish Market for our fish vendors, who have been very cooperative and I would say very orderly, in spite of the fact that they have been dislocated from the market for some time. They have been quite orderly and very reasonable vendors, and it's our joy and pleasure to look forward to the opening of a very lovely facility for them to use, and with a very nice car park to encourage buyers to use the facility. So we hope that it will be the start of a very prosperous period for our fish vendors as we look forward to the other fish market, which is the Queen's Fish Market, as we look forward to that, have some discussions with the Minister of Local Government on that.
Mayor Williams also announced that the Jubilee and Stony Hill markets are set to reopen early next year.
The Jubilee market, which has been out of operation for some time now, there is, I would say, 70 to 80% completion of the market. And it could open, but there are some final touches that we believe would be very useful for the smooth and orderly operation of that facility. And so the City Engineers Department is tasked to complete that. I don't believe that would be able to be completed before the festive season or during the festive season. So I believe sometime early January, February next year, the Jubilee market should be completed and reopened. By the end of February, we should have completed the Jubilee market, the Stony Hill market, and there is no laughing about it. The Red Rose market will be completed before sometime over the next week. As I said before, we should be opening the Red Rose fish market next week.
We also spoke with vendors of the Red Rose market who expressed their expectations for the reopening of the market.
Yeah.
You're a vendor, fish vendor?
Yes.
How long have you been selling here?
Selling fish?
Yeah.
Over 40 a year.
Right. How long now you have been on the street?
Me on the street for them said the market I go work on.
How long was that?
Me don't remember and I can't quite remember. Me never tell you a lie or say. About 10, 15 years. So about that. Feel comfortable being in market, yeah. Only man for today to open.
I know that the market we feel good because we go through too much dirty water, too much abuse, can't come flash me up and everything. So we don't mind to open tomorrow. Because we don't have a better option. And to open for going to the market and comfortable. And people come by just to see it. And when the rain falls, we don't wet up now nothing.
Reporting for Mellow TV News, I'm Killeen May.
Thank you, Colleen, for that report. Still making Mellow TV news, a driver employed to the Jamaica Urban Transit Company Limited, JUTC, who was stabbed on the weekend after foiling an attempted robbery in downtown Kingston, was released from hospital on Monday. Now it is understood that sometime after 2 p.m. on Saturday, the JUTC driver, who had been waiting in the vicinity of the Ward Theatre, observed a woman being accosted by a male assailant who attempted to relieve her of a cellular phone and other personal belongings. The driver made an alarm and intervened after seeing the man physically assaulting her. The would-be robber then attacked the driver, stabbing him in his right shoulder and abdomen. The attacker then fled the scene. The injured driver drove himself to a dispatch point where he was assisted to the hospital by police officers. The female victim did not receive any stab wounds from the perpetrator. Corporate Communications Manager Cecil Toms says that this unfortunate incident once again highlights the myriad challenges that their drivers face when they venture out. Mr. Toms added that the company salutes the drivers' bravery, but at the same time encourages their drivers to be vigilant as they do their work. He highlighted that it is also the Christmas season, and so there is heightened commercial activity. And that's our news package for you tonight. Thank you for tuning in to Mellow TV Evening News at 8. I am Shelley Ann Hill. Do stay safe and pleasant viewing.